Hey, everybody. A week ago, I did a session on multiplicity in photography by using Photoshop. And I had some emails that came through asking certain questions and asking me to clarify certain situations. And so this is dedicated to helping these people out. So are we ready for this? Let's do it. Hey, everybody, this is going to be a follow-up from a week ago, and I had some issues and questions that came up to me, and I'd like to address those. Excuse me. And if you're new to the channel, this is dedicated to thinking creatively out of the box in photography and as a photo artist. Now, one of the things that we looked at a week ago was multiplicity in photography. If you don't know what that is, I would highly recommend that you watch that video first before you watch this one. I'll put the link in the show notes to that video, and that'll get you up to speed as to what we're going to be covering here, because this is based on some questions that people had and a couple issues they were running into trying to do the technique I taught about a week ago. Okay, first thing that was asked about, and that was Lightroom. And a lot of people use Lightroom, others don't, but I had recommended that you could actually use Lightroom to select your images you're going to use for multiplicity and then flip it right into Photoshop. So to do that is very easy. But before I do it, I also want to talk about how important it was to have the consistent lighting and exposure on our images so they're always the same. That makes our job easier when we're doing multiplicity. So an example, here I am in Lightroom, and these three images, this is straight from the camera. I just filtered these out so we can see the three, and these are the three I used from a week ago, and they all have exactly the same exposure. One of the issues that came up was if I chose like this image and my exposure I wasn't happy with and I want to adjust things, okay, if I did that, the other two images have to match 100%. So I generally, this is again very subjective, it's your choice, but if I'm going to do any kind of tweaking, I tend to do it after I build the multiplicity file in Photoshop and do a stamp layer to make any adjustments there if I need to. But if things are sort of really out of whack and you need to be in RAW to fix things, here's what you do. You choose the first image and then you make your adjustments. Now I'm going to do this very aggressively so we can see this. So I'm going to push my exposure up like that just so we can see something's happening. I'm push the vibrance way up like this so the blues really are popping. And let's say I like that for some reason. Well, I need that applied to the other two images, or three or four, depends on, again, how many you're using for your project. So what you do is just hold the Shift key down on your keyboard. So I'm holding that Shift key down and I click on the last image over here. So I'm going to click down on that. So that highlights all three. They're all selected. Then over here at the very bottom on the far right side, there's a button called Sync. If I click on that button right there, it opens up a dialog box, and you'll see right here in the dialog box, basic. These are the things that I actually, I just use, two or three things over here. But you want to make sure that basic is activated, and any adjustment you made, it knows to sync that over to the other two images. This stuff is optional. I didn't do any correction there, but if you did, you would just make sure the check boxes were activated. Okay, so with that done, I just hit Synchronize button over here. And when I do that, it applies the same settings to the other two images. So all three now would be exactly the same with the adjustment. That's really important if you're going to build this multiplicity project. So I'm just going to reset all those back again to normal. So how do I get these images into Photoshop? And it's really easy. Select all three images. So again, this one is selected. I hold the Shift key down. Click on the last one there, so all three are selected. If you do a right mouse click, you'll see over here it says Edit In, and toward the bottom it says Open as Layers in Photoshop. Now, when I select that, I'm using the beta version of Photoshop right now, and I find that a lot of times there's some buggy issues once in a while, and it will crash based on what I'm doing. So hopefully We're going to survive this. Yep, looks like it's pretty good. So let me just pull the tab down so we can see the image. And let me expand this a little bit. And so there's the three images stacked on top of each other. So the way, it did this was automatic for us, right? If you remember last week, I was manually dragging over the images. So this is just another way of doing it. It's faster, in my opinion, and it's easier. Now, with that said, another issue came up with somebody, and that is their images didn't match exactly. And I should have emphasized this last time, and that is, it is so important that not only is your camera locked down on a tripod in manual mode, but I highly recommend that you have a good solid tripod. If you have some cheap tripod that's a little bit on the flimsy side, you'll find that you're going to get some kind of camera shake when you press that shutter down, and when it clicks, it'll move a little bit. And I still got some on this one, but very, very small amount. So an example, I'm on a hardwood floor or a linoleum floor. Anything that's hard and solid, you're going to hardly have any kind of shake in your camera. It might be a pixel or two, if that. But if you're on carpet or you're outside on grass, you're going to find at times you're going to have a little bit more of a shake when the images are taken and they don't perfectly match up when you're trying to do this. So here's something I should have emphasized last time. If you take a look at the stack over here in layers, I'm going to select the very top one, hold the shift key down, and I select the one at the very bottom. So all three are now selected. And I'm going to go to an area called Edit drop-down menu right here in Photoshop. And about halfway down, you're going to see something that says Auto Align Layers. When I choose that, when the dialog box opens up, just leave it alone. It's set to auto there. That's fine. You click on OK, and it will analyze and adjust the images if they need to be adjusted. If you notice over here, I see some white. And if I zoom in on this, so I was off a little bit of camera shake by a pixel or two, but it corrected it for me. So it's perfect. So sometimes a pixel or two off doesn't really show up at all. But if there was more to it, it definitely would show up when I'm trying to mask things out and might not line up perfectly for me. So that's something you should always do after you bring in your images. And that way you know for a fact it's perfect. And yes, I would have to crop this out after the fact and that, but that's fine. The key thing is I want to make sure everything is lined up and stacked on top of each other perfectly. Okay, so with that out of the way, let me share with you another technique, and that is, let me close out of this. Not going to save that. And if you remember, I opened up a dialog box last time when I had the three images opened up, and I went to Edit drop-down menu. I'm sorry, File drop-down menu, and it came down to Scripts. And in Scripts, there's a feature in there called Load Files into Stack. So if I choose that, because I had the three images opened up from last week in Photoshop, it would actually show in the dialog box when I hit this button that says Add Open Files. Okay, but I have no files. So here's just a different way. I click on Browse, and when I click on that dialog or come up to a dialog box, select your images. So you just got to navigate to where your images are at. Select all three, click on OK, and it loads the images just like last time. But this one is the images haven't been opened yet. I just selected the Browse button, so a different technique. Here's what's really important, though, and I forgot to share this with you a week ago, and that is there's a checkbox in this dialog box. So I'm going to activate that, and it says, Attempt to automatically align source images. So what it's going to do is do that auto align feature for me automatically. I don't have to go back and do it. Hopefully that makes sense. So when I click on OK, and we'll see if this works. Let it do its thing. And there we go. And I can see right here, they were off by a pixel or two. It did the auto align for me automatically, which just eliminated me doing this. Select all three images, going back to Edit drop-down menu and choosing Auto Align in Layers and clicking on OK. So that little checkbox is just a quick shortcut right there. The other thing was, how do I do this in Adobe Bridge? I mean, I had mentioned that you can actually bring in those three images. So I'm going to close out of this. Okay, the other issue that was asked is how to pull these images into Photoshop using Adobe Bridge. So if you're like a lot of people, I use the Bridge a lot. So let me open up the Bridge. So this, again, different technique, not right or wrong, personal preference. Navigate to find the images you're going to work with in Photoshop. Make sure you select all 3 images, 4, 5, whatever you're using for your project. And then under the Tools drop-down menu right here in the Bridge, you're going to see a category called Photoshop toward the bottom right there. And on the flyout menu, you're going to see Load Files into Photoshop Layers. So if I select that feature right there, it will automatically stack those images on top of each other. But remember, there's no auto align feature at all. So just like in Adobe Lightroom, I could bring it into Photoshop just like I did here with the Bridge, but there's no auto alignment. So I would have to select all 3. And again, I'm just clicking on the first one here at the very top, hold the Shift key down, click on the last one. They're all selected. And I would go back to the Edit drop-down menu. And again, about halfway down, you will find Auto Align Layers, and then just choose OK. And it will do its thing. So again, different things or different ways of actually approaching this on bringing the images into Photoshop. But I guess the key thing here is watch out with that tripod. I mean, a good sturdy tripod, you'll get hardly any shake at all. But if you're on grass, outdoors or something, or a soft carpet indoors, you might find you're going to get a little bit more of a shake than I did on a hardwood floor right here or linoleum floor. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you learned something. If you could, again, do me a favor, and that is please like this video, subscribe if you have not subscribed, and hit that notification bell. That way you'll get notified when I upload a new video to YouTube. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get that camera out and practice. I always say this at the end. This is the way we work. We make mistakes. We sit down and we analyze and learn from our mistakes, because again, we're not shooting film, so it doesn't cost us money every time we hit that trigger. So literally keep thinking out of the box. Until next time, see ya.